So, Artemis Fowl is one of those really strange films that comes out just so often. And it's really shocking that this comes out only a few months after Doolittle, which I already nominated for probably worst of the decade, and this probably technically beats it by a very, very long mile. This is really, really quite a terrible, boring, silly, stupid adaptation of the Colfer book series. And it is probably as bad as you've heard already. It is really rock bottom stupid. But Doolittle was a theatrical release. This is not. This is coming out on Disney Plus. And depending on what you have to pay for Disney Plus, it's just not worth it. If you get Disney Plus for free for a month or something, then yeah, it's fine. It's only 90 minutes. But it's really not something you could recommend. Is it bad enough that it's amusing? I guess it depends on your point of view. It isn't like super terrible, but it is very like boring. It's not very exciting. It doesn't have much of an interesting perspective on the character or the book series. So it just kind of just drags along until it finishes, and then you're like, because it's being set up as a whole franchise, but no one would really want to go back into this universe. So what's the basic story if you're completely new? Okay, Artemis Fowl is a big book series by an Irish author, basically mixing criminal underworld with magic, and it sounds like an intriguing premise, but this really gets rid of the whole premise and makes it much more bland and very generic and very unexciting. So in the book series, Artemis is really this criminal genius and he's a small child. But here he's basically a very normal, bland, simple hero kind of child, and his father goes missing. He has to find a magical item. He's fighting fairies. There's a dwarf and yeah, blah, 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 blah. It just gets very, very boring very, very quickly. And apparently in the book, Holly, who's the fairy, who's kind of his ally slash protagonist slash antagonist, has a much bigger role. So it's basically just, it's really Artemis's movie and how he has to go through a hero's journey, find the item, save the father, help the magic world, yada, 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 yada. And most of the film takes place in the house, which is a big mansion. And the cinematography and the special effects are okay. The thing with Doolittle was the special effects were pretty boring, but here they're adequate, but they're not very exciting either. It's just they just come along, and the acting is pretty well done, but again, it seems kind of miscalculated. It's very packed with people. It's got Colin Farrell, Judi Dench, Josh Gad, but they talk very, very weird. I mean, with Colin, it makes sense because of his accent. So, because this is set in Ireland, so some of it makes sense. But Judi Dench and Josh Gad have a very weird inflection with their voice. I didn't find it annoying, but I'm sure some people will find it very off-putting, and why it even adds to the story is pretty weird. And Kenneth Branagh directs this, but with Cinderella, there was some ingenuity and some verve, but here, there really isn't much being done in terms of creativity, and the music is fine, but it's being played too loudly and inappropriately in many scenes. So it doesn't have any kind of the personality, or at least, kind of fun he had with Thor or Cinderella. So it's not clear if this is really his movie, because it's only 90 minutes long or something, but you can tell this is a much, much bigger movie, and they've had it in the vaults for quite some time. Probably like 2 to 3 years, and they already gave trailers actually a couple years ago, but it's only coming out now, so it's sort of been chopped up and played with, but it's still just a fairly bland, silly, terrible adaptation, taking the most inventive ideas and just running them into the ground. So yeah, all around a pretty bad, silly, stupid movie, and probably not worth your time, but if, you have some free time, you don't mind spending a little bit of money, or, just you're completely bored out of your mind, it may work for you, but really this is just a complete failure on almost every single level you can imagine. And you kind of feel sorry for the main lead actor, who apparently this is his first big role, and he doesn't have that much experience. So I don't judge it too harshly on him, because the script just really has no really interesting take on this very interesting premise. And clearly Disney was building this up to be another Harry Potter series, but they clearly looked at it and were very not confident that it would work. And it's an interesting question. If the crisis didn't happen, would they have put it on Disney Plus, or would they have stuck to the theatrical release? Because it was being thought of as a theatrical release, and my own guess is probably not. They probably would have chickened out, and with good reason, because there just is not enough here. They might have had one good opening weekend, and that's about it. So it's a very, very major failure for Artemis Fowl. Just to be poetic, I'd probably give this a D+. I know Chris Stuckman gave it an F. I don't think it's an F territory, but it's very, very below average, even for Disney adaptations, which have been lately very uncreative and disappointing. But I can kind of see why somebody would like Dumbo or Aladdin, but this is not even in that territory. It's just pretty stupid and bad and drags and really wastes what could have been an interesting premise and a good time. Alright, so it's Artemis Fowl. Not highly recommended at all. This has been Pop Cult Analyzed on Artemis Fowl. If you like the content, please hit the like button and or subscribe. Pop Cult Analyzed. Thank you for listening. Please be safe.